Hey y'all, got a Scooby on, but anyway, I do go by Scooby as well. It's a team that I'm working on. So, this book club thing is brand new, but I figured we could start somewhere. What's better than story time? So, thank Rick and Morty, great TV show. I love that. I'll talk about them sometimes on my feeds, and then I'd like to thank Gandhi for the awesome screen. Hoodie edition. So let me just go ahead and read the cover here. So change that just a tiny bit. All right. And okay, the boys in the book. 9 Americans in their epic quest for gold at the 1936 Berlin Olympics. This is written by Daniel James Brown. And Seattle Times had to say that it was breathtaking. So let's see what that's about. It also says it was #1 in the New York Cellar. It is, I suppose, a story that's coming out of the Holocaust time, so very curious about this. It almost like from reading the back, really, and you can check out the book sometime and read that yourself. But it sounds like it's something relative to like an Anne Frank story, but it's with the boys. It's pretty interesting. Anyway, and I also just ended up finding this book through my travels. It was like in one of the donation sort of things, which I think are great. Those are so cool when the like pick a book, leave a book kind of thing. That's great. Let's keep that up. And I wonder if I should read the prologue. Let me see what it's like. And sometimes I just keep that shit out. All right, so prologue. Let's go with it. Okay. In a sport like this, hard work, not much glory, but still popular in every century. Well, there must be some beauty which ordinary men can't see, but extraordinary men do. Sounds like quite a sport. This book was born on a cold, drizzly, late spring day when I clambered over the split-rail cedar fence that surrounds my pasture and made my way through the wet woods to a modest frame house where Joe Rance lay dying. I knew only 2 things about Joe. When I knocked on his daughter Judy's door that day, I knew that in his mid-70s he had single-handedly hauled a number of cedar logs down the mountain, then hand-split the rails and cut posts and installed all 2,224 linear feet of the pasture fence. I had just come and climbed about, and I knew that he had been one of the 9 young men from the state of Washington, farm boys, fishermen, and loggers, who shocked both the rowing world and Adolf Hitler by winning the gold medal in 8-oar rowing at the 1936 Olympics. Damn! So it's a boating team. When Judy opened the door and ushered me into a cozy living room, Joe was stretched out in a recliner with his feet up, all 6 foot of 3 of them. He was wearing a gray sweatsuit and red down-filled booties, and he had a white beard. His skin was sallow, his eyes puffy, results of the congestive heart failure from which he was dying. An oxygen tank stood nearby. A fire was popping and hissing in the wood stove. The walls were covered with old family photos. A glass display case crammed with dolls, porcelain horses, and rose-patterned china stood against the far wall. Rain flecked a window that looked out onto the woods. Jazz tunes from the 30s and 40s were playing quietly on the stereo. Judy introduced me, and Joe offered me an extraordinary long, thin hand. Judy had been reading one day one of my books aloud to Joe, and he wanted to meet. He probably wanted to meet me. And he wanted to meet me and talk about it. As a young man, he had extraordinary confidence. Been afraid of Angus Hay Jr., the son of a person central to the story of the book. So we talked about that for a while, then conversation began to turn to his own life. His voice was radiant and fragile, he and attuned and attenuated almost to the breaking point. Prompt, prompting, Skipper, prompting from his daughter, he began to spin out some threads of his life story, recalling his childhood and his young adulthood during the Great Depression. He spoke haltingly but resol- resolutely about a series of the hardships he had endured and obstacles he had overcome. A tale that, as I was taking notes, at first surprised and astonished me. But it wasn't until he began to talk about his rowing career at the University of Washington that he started from time to time to cry. He talked about learning the art of rowing, about shells and oars, about tactics and technique. He reminisced about long, cold hours on the water under still gray skies, about smashing victories and defeats that narrowly averted, about traveling to Germany and marching under Hitler's eyes into the Olympic Stadium in Berlin, about his crewmates. None of those recollections brought him to tears, though. It was when he tried to talk about the boat that his words began to falter and tears welled up in his bright eyes. So at first I thought he meant the Husky Clipper, the racing shell in which he had rowed for his way to glory. Or did he mean his teammates, the improbable assemblage of the young men who had pulled off one of the rowing's greatest achievements? Finally, watching Joe struggle for composure over and over, I realized the boat was something more than just a shell or its crew. To Joe, it encompassed but transcended both. It was something mysterious and almost beyond definition. It was a shared experience, a singular thing that had unfolded a golden silver time, in a golden silver of time, in a golden sliver of time long gone, when nine good-hearted young men strove together, pulled together as one, gave everything they had for one another, bound together forever by pride and respect and love. Joe was crying, at least in part for the loss of a vanished moment, but much more, I think, the sheer beauty of it. As I was preparing to leave that afternoon, Judy removed Joe's medal from the glass case against the wall and handed it to me. While I was admiring it, she told me that it had vanished years before. The family had searched for Joe's house for high and low for it, but had finally given up. Only many years when they were remodeling the house, they had finally found it concealed in some insulating material in the attic. Wow. A squirrel had apparently taken a liking to the glimmer, and the gold medal was away in its nest as a personal treasure. As Judy was telling me this, it occurred to me that Joe's story, like the medal, had been squirreled away, and out of sight for too long. I shook Joe's hand again and told him I would like to come back and talk to him some more. And I said that I'd like to write a book about his rowing days. Joe grasped my hand again and said he'd like that. But his voice then broke, and more he astonished me gently. But it's not just about me, it has to be about the boat. About the fucking team. Right? So I'll show the other picture and this one, I suppose. Oh, okay. So thank you to James Brown, or excuse me, Daniel James Brown. Daniel James Brown. So this is cool. Sounds like it's going to be a great story too. Cool. And then we got this other picture here. That's pretty cool. Alright, let me check one thing here. Okay. Alright, so chapter 1. Having rowed myself since the tender age of 12 and having been around rowing ever since, I believed I could speak authoritatively on may call an unseen values of rowing, the social morale and the spiritual values of this oldest chronicled sports in the world. No Didiac. Oh, excuse me. No, no, no didactic, no didactic teaching. Didactic. No didactic teaching will place these values in a young man's soul. He has to get them by his own observations and lessons. Okay, that's a quote from George Yeoman Pocock. So Monday, October 9th, 1933, began as a gray day in Seattle, a gray day in gray time. Along the waterfront, seaplanes from the Gorst Air Transport Company rose slowly from the surface of the Puget Sound and droned westward, flying low under the cloud cover. Beginning their short hops over the naval shipyard at Bremerton, ferries crawled away from Coleman Dock on water as flat and dull as old pewter. Downtown, the Smith Tower pointed like an upraised finger. And I gotta take a break at 11:11, guys. Thank you for watching.